So we're definitely going to do another episode with you, Randall. This is amazing stuff. I want to shift the gear for a second though, because I want to ask you from because I know you and I share this. I heard you make this comment before. You and I share this opinion that we would love another 700 or 800 years of our lifetime to be able to forward our science and complete what we started before we die off. But from a pragmatic perspective of, only having one lifetime to get this message conveyed and get this science uncovered, what is your hope for humanity in being able to understand the reality of our history, and what do you hope to have come from this science being uncovered?
Good question. Well, I mean, I think as we're all going to agree here, mainstream media, huge percentage of modern focus and attention is on stuff that's just utterly superficial. Mm-hmm. It has no bearing on our long-term well-being or our survival as a species. I mean, what is happening now is it's just one distraction after another that's being put out there to keep people, diverted from the stuff that really does matter. And right. I think what's happening here is that there's this small group of us, like me and Graham, Robert Schoch, John Anthony West, he was a little elder. But I was certainly influenced by him way back in the 70s. He's no longer with us now. But he was definitely a ringleader in this paradigm shift. But a lot of us are about the same age. We started into this, and listen, I've got to give credit to psychedelics too, because back between 68 and 70, when I was doing psychedelics, I started into it totally naive, not knowing at all what I was expecting. And what happened was my whole world was exploded. But what it
we can relate.
Yeah, what it led into was before, and initially, I had very good sources. I won't get into specifics, although it probably doesn't matter now a half century later, but I had a direct pipeline to, the good stuff right out of Sandoz laboratory back then. But what happened is I discovered that where I really liked having these experiences was out in nature.
Right.
And initially I would do it and, go to rock concerts and rock festivals and things like that, and having a lot of fun and seeing the light shows and the rock music, which totally blew me away and stuff. But come spring of 1969, I started getting out on the road and basically, again, like I said, I liked hiking and camping and stuff. And what I discovered was doing peyote, doing acid, things like that, it seemed like it was almost like I got the sense that I was seeing through time, and I was beginning to perceive these hidden images in the landscape.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely can attribute this correlation there that some of my earliest awakenings were I'm tripping and I'm seeing some of these phenomena and going, there's something else here. There's something superimposed upon what we normally see day to day that's invisible, yet it's there. And if we get the eyes, we're going to begin to see it.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've done any psychedelics, only because the way the environment changed and I finally, it kind of culminated when I got some very strange stuff and did a 3-month trip. And after 3 months, it took me 3 months to come out of it. And I don't know what it was to this day. It wasn't normal psychedelics though. And I think it might've been, the rumor was going around that stuff was being put out on the street. Nixon had come to office and he basically launched the drug war.
Right.
And, not long after that is when all this shit began showing up on the streets and people started having bad trips and all of that. And that was pretty much when I stopped. I felt like I was just at the beginning of realizing that there was this other dimension and use of these substances.
Right.
But at that point, the whole milieu changed and I backed off because I didn't want a repetition of this ordeal that I had been through.
Right.
So, it took me, that would have been, late summer, early fall of 1969. And I really didn't feel like it was back to normal again till summer of 70. And what I did was I went out and I spent the whole summer out in the Black Hills of South Dakota, the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, drinking this incredible spring water, and just basically cleaning out, purifying myself, learning how to meditate, studying spiritual literature. I mean, I spent 6 weeks up in a lean-to on a mountaintop with the Tao Te Ching and several other ancient scriptures, just studying that, thinking about stuff, what I'd been through. And then I lucked out and was able to actually encounter what I consider some bona fide spiritual teachers who showed me some things that confirmed to me that, yes, there are ways to experience some of these things without actually even ingesting drugs. You know?
Yeah, now you're in my ballpark.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but then, things change. I decided at some point that, I needed to figure out a way to make a living legally. So
unlike the government,
I fell back on what I had learned. My father was a master carpenter, house builder. His dad was. So I had come up in that without any particular interest in becoming one myself. But then I decided it was around 72, I needed a job. And I was with this spiritual group. We were studying under a Brahmin priest who was a Sanskrit professor at the University of Minnesota. And he was a student of a Himalayan Swami that had basically grown up at 18,000 feet in a cave in the Himalayas. And he came with this whole tradition of tantric meditation and yoga. And so I got really fascinated by that, began studying it. And then we bought land up in northern Minnesota, and one of the architects in the group designed 2 Buckminster Fuller domes. Remember Buckminster Fuller?
Sure.
Yeah, good. Okay, so Buckminster Fuller was the kind of the godfather of the geodesic dome that
sure
all of the hippies back then wanted to live in a geodesic dome, right? Until they discovered that they leaked like hell, and every time the water would be pouring in on them. So. Although I will say this, there may be a place for them now, because our technologies have advanced so much that there are now materials that we could potentially cover these domes with that they wouldn't leak. But
get Apple to manufacture one of those suckers.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so we built 2 domes up in the north woods of Minnesota, and I had to figure out all the geometry and everything in there and how to make them fit together. And that's kind of where I go, this is really fun, interesting stuff. And I love geometry. And so what happened was is it led me into the building trades. And I thought, well, I'll do my own thing, and which I did. And then in my spare time, I'll just study and research all the stuff that I love to do. Right. So that basically goes back, to 70, 71, 72, right in there. And I remember for my 18th birthday, which was in March of 1969, I kept a journal, and I still have that journal. And I wrote in there, one of my goals in life is to become one of the most educated individuals of my generation. And I wrote that right around my 18th birthday.
Wow.
So I kind of set out on this quest and part of it was to learn what I felt was the most significant and important stuff that my generation needed to know to go to take the human race forward. So that was kind of my motivation and my incentive and the vision that I had back in 1969, and I'm still pretty much holding to that as much as possible.
Right.
And now I'm kind of at the point where I'm suddenly realizing, like I said, I've labored in obscurity, and I am overwhelmed at this point with the response that my stuff has been getting in the last couple of years, particularly since Joe Rogan. I mean,
right.
The last I heard, which was a year ago, the debate with Shermer and Hancock had like 10 or 12 million views. And maybe double that now,
Right.
I'll tell you what I see coming out of this is, one of the things that's inspired me is, when I go back to the ancient teachers, Plato and Pythagoras and those kind of guys, they had places, there was the Socratic Forum, the Pythagorean lodges, the Platonic academies, these were places where you could come to learn and digest information, because they were like clearinghouses of all of the knowledge of that time. Right. And when you look at what's happened with modern academia and in the modern college campus, it's just degenerated into this
Dog,
pathetic
so
political
bad.
correct crap.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, it's almost saying, look, we need a new format here.
Yeah.
We need a new way of approaching this stuff, you know, with an open mind, but scientifically, and linking together the best of what modern science is yielding with what we've inherited, this amazing legacy from our past that has generally been neglected. There's no place where you can bring these streams together where they can evolve into this mighty river. And that's what I would like to, you know, if I've got 2 or 3 decades left, which I hope I do, that's what I would like to work towards. You know, and continuing to get people out, because listen, there is a story that's been engraved into this planetary landscape. It's been there, basically invisible, for 12,000 years, because we have not had the perceptual capabilities to see it. But we are now in that position, you know, ever since it started with satellite, with aerial photography, and then it moved up to satellite photography. And now we've got LiDAR coming online. We've got all of these new technologies where we can now suddenly see Earth in a way that we've never had before, and realize what our ancestors knew well, which is that there is this connection between the terrestrial realm and the celestial. And why were our ancestors so obsessed with the celestial realm? It's because we're seeing this now, that we are not an isolated system. Our planet has been part of a cosmic environment since day one. And our ancestors knew this. And this is one reason they were so obsessed with observing the sky and changes in the sky. See, what we need is a place where seekers from all over the world can actually come together and share this kind of information, in a very rigorous way, in a scientifically rigorous way, but in a way that now recognizes, no, we're not supreme necessarily. We have this legacy of lost civilizations. And one of the reasons people like Michael Shermer and other skeptics have been so dismissive is because they say, well, where is the potsherds? Where is the evidence, the hard evidence that there was a civilization?
Right.
We'll save this for another conversation. But what I suspect is that we're looking at, and the evidence for this now again is pretty much overwhelming. There were cultures in the past that were way more scientifically sophisticated than they've been given credit for.
Right.
And they perhaps developed technological based civilizations that don't look anything like the one we have created, which is basically built upon fossil fuels, right?
Right.
And there's enough evidence and enough lines of inquiry over, say, the last century that I think points in the direction of what kind of technologies they were exploring. And the poster right above Ben there, Tesla is my homeboy. I think Tesla was on to things, he was in effect rediscovering things that were already known thousands of years ago.
You know, that's an amazing point. And I shared it with the guys here at lunch that we were talking earlier, that, you know, if there was an advanced society with a better understanding of science than we have today, you know, our nervous system is a basic comparator, and it always compares two things. And it's like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you don't smell the gas versus when you smell the gas, your nervous system will show you the difference in between the two, and it'll wake you up and say, hey, dummy, wake up because this gas is going to kill you. And then you walk around the house for 10 minutes, and between time 1 and time 2, the gas is high and remains high, and so your nervous system stops telling you about that smell, and you don't smell it anymore. You think it was a dream. You go to bed, and it kills the whole family. Well, I think if we had a higher level of understanding in the past of science and our universe, a lot of our discovery that always comes from our subconscious, by the way, and even Einstein supported this idea that, you know, when you have a problem, you think about it for a while, but you're never the one that solves it. It's always that thing that comes from your subconscious, that it comes from your body, that all of a sudden you have the answer that presents itself within your consciousness. It comes from your level of subconscious that knows more about something that you're trying to fix than you do. I think if we had that knowledge, that may be the drive of our human discovery process of increasing our technology, and the reason that we've went from the Wright brothers to the moon in 66 years is because we've already known some of this potentially. We've already fixed and discovered a lot of this science already, and our nervous systems are simply kind of evoking it from having it within us to be able to try to create that equilibrium, to balance that difference between the one thing that it knows and the stupid person on top that's trying to figure it out. And it gives us the answers in a fashion that we can then work with from a time-based perspective. What do you think?
I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, yeah, you're putting the frosting on the cake with that. I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're in a position where there's major shifts in consciousness taking place. I think that, there was a major shift that occurred in the 60s. And subsequent to that, we've been in this state of ferment and things have come and gone. And we're kind of in a state now where we really need to have a relaunch of some of those things that got started. And we're, again, I get back to this thing that we're just getting suffocated in trivia, and mainstream media is largely to blame, by just constantly putting this crap out there that does nothing but distract people. But there is certainly a growing contingent of people that are seeing through that and are asking questions. And it's gratifying to me to see the response that myself and Graham and others have gotten who are doing this kind of work. That there's a lot of people, particularly young people, who are hungry for this kind of knowledge and know instinctively that there's a much deeper story here. And those are the ones we need to reach out to. And I see basically, I'm getting communications from all over the world now. People saying, yeah, we're looking at stuff over here in Sweden now. I'm looking at stuff in my backyard in Sweden with new eyes because of what I saw you do. That kind of thing is very gratifying to me. And I think that we're looking at something here that transcends, the nation state, because, one small asteroid hitting the planet is going to quickly show us that we're all in the same boat here. And this may be the trigger it's going to take, just every month now we're seeing near misses. And the question that I keep asking is it because we have the technological means to see these things that have been flying by the Earth with regularity, or is the flux of these things actually increasing? Which really has
a tough question.
Yeah, that is a tough question.
Yeah, it is a tough question. But whatever the answer to the question is, we're realizing that, our near cosmic neighborhood is filled with this debris. And I've used the analogy before. We're like sitting ducks in a cosmic shooting gallery. And, another repeat of the events of June 30th, 1908, if you're familiar with that.
Tunguska.
Yeah. Tunguska. And there is a hell of a story, which we could devote some time to if you wanted to, because we've only just really, spent the last 50 or 60 years extracting those lessons, and it has a lot to teach us. But I can tell you this, if we had a repeat of that now, it would be a game changer.
Yeah.
Especially if it...
Yeah. I'm just thinking that type of an event helps you shift your sense of self, and I think that's what your work is doing en masse. Is it helps us to look at ourselves as a human race rather than a group of cultures or a country that is divided by walls and borders and barriers and mindset and political systems and things like that. I mean, all that stuff doesn't really matter when you start taking into consideration potential extinction events that could take us out if we don't implement the technology that could, circumvent those. And, the nervous system en masse, right? All of our emotional responses come from two simple variables. Your limbic system always scans your environment for threats, right? And it's always looking for a threat. Is that a snake? Is that coil over there a snake, or is that a hose, right? Or is this person a threat? Is this headline a threat? Is this what this person represents a threat, or is this ideology a threat? Well, then a second question must be asked: a threat to what? And that what is the sense of self. It is because your brain's that organ of survival that's designed to bring you from one day into the next. And this is where the people who are attached to their dogmatic science go off the rails, is because that sense of self starts as your body, but science with Jim Cohn at UVA, he showed that other people can get written onto your sense of self, which is why we have emotions for our family members or our friends or our SEAL teammates or whatever it is for these guys on the couches. But that expands. Our sense of self that used to be just our body expands out into the people that we know. And then Tiffany Burnett White at UAUC said or showed us that how brands can become mapped onto the sense of self and how we care about Apple or Android or Ford or Chevy or whatever it is, the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Knicks or whatever it is that we attach to self. And that's why we have emotional reactions connected with those things that we want to defend. And then, Sam Harris did some studies that proved that politics and religion become mapped onto our sense of self, which is why we get all up in arms when people attack our politics or our religion, etc. And it's this exact same wiring based on this malleable sense of self that we have in our human heads. And I think your work helps us shift our sense of self to not care about the little shit as much when we start to expand our sense of awe in these amazing pictures that you show us and the amazing stories that you're telling us that we almost got wiped out about 12,000 years ago. And if we aren't careful, we're going to let it happen for real next time if we don't take some steps to be able to mitigate these celestial bodies coming into Earth, because it's within our technological capability to do so, and it could literally save all of our skins, regardless of what our individual differences are in religion or politics or our belief systems or, our monetary systems, castes, whatever you want to call it. And I think that your work is helping us get over the little shit. You know what I'm saying? And I really appreciate it.
Well, I would like to think so. I mean, I hope there's a reason I've been doing this for 50 years. Some outcome here that